Hey, do you ever wonder what it's like to buy a NASCAR? Because if so, and how you can go about buying one?
To purchase a retired NASCAR race car, you can look for them in several places, including online auction sites like eBay and specialized racing websites like Racing Junk. You can also consider contacting teams directly or exploring lesser series that use NASCAR-style cars. Here's a more detailed look at how to find and potentially purchase a retired NASCAR car. Online marketplaces and classifieds. eBay. You can find used NASCAR race engines, chassis, and complete cars on eBay, often at competitive prices. Racing Junk. This website is a popular hub for race car enthusiasts, with listings for various types of racing vehicles, including NASCAR cars, parts, and equipment. Other online classifieds. Websites like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace may also have listings, though the selection and quality may vary too. Contacting NASCAR teams. Direct inquiry. You can try contacting teams directly to inquire about their retired cars. However, this may not always be successful, as some teams prefer to keep their cars for show purposes or for parts. Exploring lesser series. Many lesser series, like ARCA, Busch, and NASCAR West, utilize NASCAR-style cars. You can explore these series for potential opportunities to purchase cars. 3. Understanding the types of cars. Budget. The price of a retired NASCAR car can vary significantly, depending on its condition, history, and the parts it includes. Purpose. Are you planning to race the car, display it, or use it as a parts source? This will influence your search and budget. Legalities. Ensure you understand the regulations for racing or modifying a NASCAR car in your area. In summary, while directly purchasing a top-tier, championship-winning NASCAR car is unlikely, you can still find retired cars from various sources, including online marketplaces, specialized websites, and by contacting teams or exploring lesser series. Be prepared to do your research and consider the factors mentioned above to ensure a smooth and successful purchase.
Let's go here. Wow, there's a lot of NASCAR memorabilia. Okay, we're done with that. What?
Recapturing the Glory, a guide to buying and racing a classic NASCAR ride. Would it surprise you to know that vintage racing is actually one of the most affordable ways to get involved in door-to-door competition once you've factored out the high-dollar, Le Mans, winning prototypes and early Ferraris that cross the auction block for roughly the GDP of Samoa? Of course, owning a classic race car isn't all wire wheels and leather helmets. And although the sports car crowd often gets much of the spotlight when it comes to antique metal turning in hot laps, there also exists a thriving subculture of readily available, easy to maintain, and very affordable track rides. I'm talking, of course, about old-school NASCAR stock cars, your under-the-radar ticket to sneaking a little course onto the concourse lawn.
I did not know that.
Why go classic? Why would you want an old stock car? Let me try to convince you. First of all, until very recently, NASCAR has kept its rulebook very simple in terms of describing the mechanical dos and don'ts of building a car for competition. To wit, you're looking at a tube frame with a full roll cage topped with a fiberglass body, a basic 4-speed manual gearbox, and a 5.7-liter or so pushrod V8 fed by a carburetor sitting between the front fenders.
Whoa, that's cool.
Now throw in the fact that mixing and matching bodies with chassis is relatively easy to do, and that aero and suspension adjustments on these cars are simple enough that you won't require a degree in, well, anything to run a safe and effective setup, and the plug-and-play appeal of these unfinicky beasts becomes clear. Of course, there are a few details you'll want to work out before handing over a deposit on a historically significant rolling billboard. Pick an era, almost any era. There are several different eras of NASCAR stock cars out there on the market, each with its own pros, cons, and quirks. Technically, you could go back to the early 50s and search for any of the wide range of Hudsons, Pontiacs, Fords, and Chevrolets that hit the sands at Daytona. But in addition to being rare, these vehicles are almost always near stock in terms of power and performance, and as such are better suited to static display or on-road cruising than actual modern racing. The same can be said for 60s and, to a certain degree, 70s cars, although the latter are easier to update to modern safety and handling standards.
I don't know if it's really stock though, unless you mean stock car.
There are two sweet spots for vintage NASCAR ownership. Stock cars that were built in the 1980s and 90s walk the line between classic looks and ease of maintenance, as their sturdy construction and ability to receive a variety of drivetrains make them Swiss Army knives when it comes to putting together a track package that you can afford to campaign. The 1981-91 cars have a shorter 110-inch wheelbase compared to their predecessors and, in terms of styling and aero, offer everything from the brick-like Chevrolets, Buicks, and Pontiacs to the bullet-shaped Ford Thunderbirds. The 1991 and newer cars are more aero-sensitive at higher speeds and offer additional freedom in terms of body shape. The leading edge of this particular window is becoming narrower by the year, however, as supplies of early 80s NASCAR steel bumper survivors dry up and prices climb accordingly. More easily attainable are cup cars that ran past the year 2000, which can be divided into traditional and car of tomorrow type designs. These cast-offs from pro teams are plentiful on the ground, and are not difficult to find in race-ready shape. If you find yourself on a tight budget or live in an area where grassroots stock car racing is a going concern, then you may want to wade out into the pool of the lesser series that run NASCAR-style specs. ARCA, Busch, and its many sponsorship name changes, NASCAR West, Late Model, NASCAR Elite, and a host of other championships throw off race cars on a regular basis as teams fold, drivers retire, or teams whittle down their inventory to a single ride.
This is before it has all the wrap on it and everything.
Roller or runner? You'll also have to decide whether you're interested in purchasing a runner or a roller. The former is a car that features a fully intact drivetrain, usually in competition trim, although not necessarily the same engine that was used during its racing heyday. The latter is a rolling shell that will require you to install your own engine and transmission.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
The advantages of a runner is that it gets you behind the wheel of a relatively turnkey racer, and providing that you get full details of the car's running gear and engine build, and that you can afford to maintain whatever beast like tune it's running, this is a solid choice, particularly for post-2000 cars. You can pick up an early negative 2000s runner for as little as $30,000 with its original drivetrain on a site like racecars.com or Cars Online, two of the most popular clearinghouses for old-school fiberglass. But be warned, the more spares, and the better the pedigree the car has, the higher the price tag. If you're a big spender, you can even approach a current NASCAR team about buying a recently retired racer, but be prepared to fork over six figures for something that fresh. A rolling shell is more appealing if you've got a race-ready engine sitting in your garage and simply want to wrap the NASCAR shell around your reliable setup. Prices are all over the map for rollers, but they can start as low as $10,000 for a mid-pack chassis featuring a more obscure livery or not-so-famous driver history. What are they like to drive? As simple as NASCAR stock cars are, it would be a mistake to think that their basic V8 designs aren't capable of putting out substantial power. Over the last 35 years, Cup cars have put out between 600 and 800 ponies, and, in fact, it's so easy to skirt the rulebook with an engine that looks entirely legal that one high-profile classic NASCAR racing series actually shut down a decade or so ago after it could no longer police what the teams were bringing to the track, a situation that led to a glut of rollers hitting the market as privateer teams moved on. All this to say that with that much power in a car weight in the neighborhood of 3,400 pounds, you'll have to pay attention behind the wheel. These cars aren't difficult to drive, but they don't have the finesse of a modern sports car and can see high cabin temperatures after a full throttle session bleeds heat through the firewall. You'll also need to know whether the car you are buying was set up for go fast turn left oval racing, or the more even balance required for a road course. Oval cars feature a chassis and suspension that is dramatically different than a road course car, and while there are plenty of excellent resources out there to help you get your classic dialed in, make sure you're starting from the right foundation. Regardless of what you buy, you'll have to make sure safety is up to date. Just because your car comes with a full roll cage that may have been state-of-the-art the year it was installed, doesn't mean you should assume that it passes modern muster, or that whatever club you choose to run with won't require additional, and specific, safety equipment. Always make sure you read the rules of any organization you intend to join before showing up at the track to avoid a disappointing day in the pits. Who to run with? Now that you've got the stock car of your dreams sitting in your garage, you're probably wondering where you can uncork it and drive it like you stole it, or whatever other marketing catchphrase you'd prefer to use as a descriptor for your track day antics. The good news is that classic cup cars and their ilk are welcome at almost any high-performance driving event you're likely to come across. Unlike other race cars, their bulk makes them easy to see in a mixed field of drivers, and provided they've been updated, their sturdy construction gives them a good reputation for safety. Vintage races across the country also have a place for most old-school NASCAR rides, with the Sportscar Vintage Racing Association and Historic Sportscar Racing each offering a good starting point to find dates and events near you that are friendly to vintage cup. You can also put their aerodynamics to the test with some land speed racing. There's no class for NASCAR cars in the SCTA, so while you can run at Bonneville and El Mirage, it would be for time only and you wouldn't be eligible for setting any records. However, if you'd like to stay off the salt and silt, the ECTA does have a class ready-made for these retired race cars at their standing mile events, and you can vie for a spot in the 200 miles per hour club. Only one question remains. What are you waiting for? It's time to grab that fire suit, thank your sponsor, and invest in a tractor-trailer full of foot-wide slicks for a summer season full of NASCAR fun. You may also like automotive history. Acura to Volvo, 38 car company names and their origins. Scott Oldham lists 28 little-known muscle car facts. Diego Rosenberg, your daily dose of car news from what happens to old or wrecked race cars. In NASCAR, it's the cycle of life. Don Coble, Daytona Beach, old race cars apparently never die. They just become new swing sets. Golf clubs and race cars, a sport known for its mechanical extravagance, is very frugal when it comes to throwing things away. And while efforts to recycle should excite environmentalists, the biggest reason is it makes good business sense. Nothing off a race car should ever end up in a landfill, said Lewis Gordon, whose company, L. Gordon Iron and Metal Company in Statesville, NC, specializes in shredding damaged cars. Everything can be reused. A car is 100% recyclable.
For the most part.
Gordon said he shredded hundreds of race cars and sent their remains to a mini mill to be refined back into raw steel. Steel is worth 7 cents a pound as scrap, while aluminum can fetch 40 cents. It takes 30 seconds to smash a car flat, then rip it apart by 12 crushing hammers. We've had some drivers come in with their race cars, and they wanted them pressed into a cube they could use for a coffee table, or something like that, Gordon said. Some cars are too difficult to throw away. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has several cars parked in the thick woods at his Dirty Mo Acres farm in Mooresville, NC. Included in his collection at the graveyard is the Chevrolet Jeff Gordon drove to win the 1997 Daytona 500. Most of the cars in the remote woods now are covered by tall grass and bushes. But most race cars don't wind up withering away in a forgotten corner of a remote forest. Sheet metal can wind up on eBay as souvenirs or saved to use as patches for a future wreck, car owner Eddie Wood said. Crumpled frames and engines are sent to scrap yards like Gordon or Foils Incorporated, in Harrisburg, NC, where they are flattened, then ripped into hand-size pieces that will be milled back into new steel. And some of that steel can end up back in a race shop. Tires can be cut into doormats, or ground into the dust used as a filler on artificial turf fields or playgrounds. Oil and grease is refined to be used by the U.S. military and postal service, as well as major trucking companies. In short, every part and piece of a crashed car has an afterlife. We don't get rid of a lot of cars, said Chad Noss, Jimmy Johnson's crew chief. A car has to be pretty bad if we say it's a do not resuscitate. We send everything out to be recycled. You won't find anything in the garbage can. Noss said 3 cars were sent away to be recycled last year. Other damaged cars were either sold to lower-tier teams or stripped down for parts.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Teams are more willing to take an undamaged back half of a car and attach to the front half of an undamaged car. That not only saves money, but it keeps their proprietary technology from being available to the public, or other teams before they meet their crushing demise. Some cars are rebuilt and sold to collectors or placed in museums, while others simply become show cars. With only a few exceptions like Earnhardt Graveyard, cars aren't abandoned and left to rust away. At our place, we tend to hang on to everything, Wood said. I bet we have 100 old radiators that we've collected over the years. They're obsolete for NASCAR, but they're usable. There's nothing wrong with them, so we keep them in case somebody needs one.
I hope you guys liked this video, as it was something different about NASCAR I thought I should share about NASCAR, because about their old wrecked cars and how to buy a car. Because I was wondering how you buy an old NASCAR after they retire it or after it's been in a wreck. So I hope you like this video.